Welcome to the BrightWord Books Podcast, where we bring authors and their stories to life. I'm your host, Chris Dabbs, and today we're honoured to sit down with a man whose life reads like an epic novel, filled with resilience, transformation, and the relentless pursuit of freedom. Our guest is Michael Gloukhov, author of the powerful memoir Sofia-Brussels-Washington, From Serfdom to Freedom to Self-Accomplishment, Finding the American Dream. Born during the bombing of Sofia in 1944, Michael's journey took him from communist Bulgaria to Western Europe and finally to the United States, where he forged a new life as a scholar, broadcaster, Navy reservist, and proud American. Get ready for a conversation full of history, heart, and hard-won wisdom. But Michael, your story, well, first of all, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. We really want to hear about exactly what you've done and about the book, of course. And so your story begins in wartime Sofia during a turbulent moment in world history. I mean, can you tell me and tell our listeners a little bit about that and take us back to those early years and what life was like in communist Bulgaria? Because it's obviously a lifetime away. It's many decades away from us now.
Actually, one of the reasons I wrote this testimony, yes, I went through quite a number of challenges, but a lot of people in the West, especially in the United States, don't know much about Bulgaria as a former member of the Soviet bloc. Actually, the most they knew was that Bulgaria was the most submitted Soviet satellite and doing the dirty work for the Soviet Union, which was also true. And that will give some light on this country at that time. Of course, the whole thing began in 1944 when the Soviet troops reached the Romanian border. And at that time, Bulgaria and Romania had a peace treaty. Bulgaria and the Soviet Union had a peace treaty because as a member of the Axis and ally of Nazi Germany, Bulgaria was the only exception. First, it didn't deliver the Jews to the Germans. The Bulgarian Jews were safe, and people respected that. And second, Bulgaria refused to make troops on the Eastern Front because of 19th century relationship with Russia when Bulgaria became independent from the Ottoman Empire. But the Soviets ignored the treaty. They invaded, crossed the Danube, invaded Bulgaria. 1 million Soviet army occupied Bulgaria, and that's how communism came with 5,000 partisans and communists, Bulgarian and their wagons and tanks. And so they destroyed civil society. They killed over 130,000 people very quickly. Basically, they eliminated the elite and open concentration camps, and the system cracked down with the heavy hand of Stalinism. So in 1944, before the arrival of the Soviets, actually Bulgaria was officially at war with the United States and Great Britain. So what they did is they bombed. Actually, their bombing was mostly against the Romanian oil field, but they had to cross Bulgaria, and Bulgaria was shutting down those planes. So those are the circumstances under which I've been born, and actually outside Sofia, when my father as an army officer, was evacuated with the general staff. And this is when I've been born. After we arrived in Sofia in September 9th, communism arrived with the Soviet group.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. So you mentioned your father there. Your father being affiliated with the Royal Army, that had a significant impact on your family, as you said. But how did those early political dynamics shape your understanding of freedom and authority? Because, of course, you've seen it from a totalitarian side, and now you're seeing the freedom side. So, yeah, it's amazing. How did that affect you?
I probably that's how I'm built. I'm a very curious person. I want to know. I'm not satisfied with what I hear on the radio. We didn't get television at that time. And from my early age, probably around 15, I started listening to Radio Free Europe, Voice of America. They've been heavily jammed. But this is when I started. I like Western music. Also, my mother worked in the Bulgarian press agency. She was a typist at that time, but she had access to foreign information, and through her, I had bits and pieces and started forming gradually my opinion. Also, even to me, the misery was perceptible. Suddenly, there was no water, no electricity. The stores were empty, and the police was all over the place. They've been walking on the street by three police officers at the time, heavily armed, and the misery was incredible. There was no shoes, no clothing. We've been reduced to look like factory workers in all ages, and people started disappearing. It was clear to me, even as a child, other relatives, also colleagues of my father, like Air Force officers, they took me in concentration camp. So the terror began, and I could figure it out. And gradually, I could start comparing with the radio broadcast. And they also forced my parents to divorce
Yeah.
because they told my mother, in the press agency you work, you cannot be married to a fascist officer. Of course, he was labeled fascist immediately. And so they said, you have to divorce him. He said, but I have a little child. I was 6 years old at that time. They say it doesn't matter. You're going to lose your job. It's your choice. So that's how my parents got to divorce. I stayed with my mother. My grandfather was an left-wing intellectual. Actually, he was among the founders of the Bulgarian Radical Party, and he was Russophile, and he was also not a fan of the Soviet Union, but he was considered as progressive, and that's how this word appeared. As a progressive, he was very popular, also good public speaker, very smart man, new French, new Russian, and they wanted to attract him in the Communist Party that he refused, but he became member of the first parliament of the United Socialist Government. And this is probably what kept me relatively safe, because when they asked me about my background and who is raising me, I say, yes, it's my mother and my grandfather. But when they dig up on my background a little bit more, and especially when I came to an age of high, over high school and I wanted to go to college, and also when I was conscripted in the army, then my father's background came first. And they said the son of the fascist officer, uh, and clearly told me that there will be no higher education for me. My path is to the factory, and that's how my life was ready.
Wow, 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 wow. We,
Uh, Definitely did not accept the for myself.
No, right. I mean, that's really that. Yeah, that's a great story, really. I mean, it's shocking. Obviously, I mean, parents divorcing, having to go through all of that, and being pushed down a particular route as well, just because of who your father was. I mean, you made a bold decision to avoid joining the Communist Party by serving as a private rather than as an officer when you went into the army. So, what went into that decision, and how risky was that for you to do that?
No, it was not risky. Actually, you don't join the Communist Party because you like. You have to have some merits. Yes, they have to choose you according because uh, most of the Communist Party members at that time were just illiterate people. During the previous government, they were probably thief stealers. Basically, they emptied the jails, and those people were good for nothing. They were just servants of the party. They would kill anybody, including their own families, just to grab some power and stay on. But they also needed intelligent people who would move the factories, the economy, and they would be submitted to those type of communists, but they still need to become member of the party. Also, one of the ways to become member of the party at that age was uh, through the military service. And I had a very good high school diploma, extremely high quality, because the neighborhood I used to live had this school, and this is where I was going. The teachers were even from pre-communist time, and with this kind of diploma, uh, I could advance very far. But the only advancement for me was predetermined through military service. So I've been approached twice to join the reserve officer school, and uh, the only condition was to be taken 3 months earlier for the school itself. And I knew that if I joined the school, I would have a good life. For 2 years, I'll become an officer following the traditions in my family, 4 generations officers. But I talked to my father, and he was at that time very discreet what he was talking, uh, because it was risky even to have this type of conversation. But he told me, it's your choice and your decision, but don't forget that the officers of today are not like the officers of my time, and they may force you to become member of the Communist Party. Once you cross this threshold, you don't belong to yourself anymore. Basically, you have to spy on your family, spy on your colleagues, spy on your friends and anybody you know. And if you have a party order, you have to go. If they order you to kill somebody, you have to do it. And that somebody, I was not ready. Something I was not ready to accept, and I turned down the propositions first time and second time too. They told me, we'll get you anyway, and they did. And it was not easy, but I survived.
Yeah, clearly. So, and then of course, you moved on, didn't you? And let's move on now to your escape, I guess, and your resettlement, because that's a fascinating story as well, I guess. So what was, sorry, do you need to take that call?
Just a second, I suddenly cannot hear very well.
Okay. I think you had did a call try and come through or something. So can you hear me now? Does that work?
Uh,
Hopefully.
I can hear, but
So yeah, it's always tricky. I'll keep talking so you can adjust that, and hopefully you'll hear um, as we're trying to make sure that everything works. Hopefully it will. Um, yeah, amazing story so far.
okay, we have to continue like that. The sound almost disappeared.
Oh, okay, strange.
But
Right.
no, I have to put my phone to my ear and then I can hear. So
Okay.
we can continue.
Excellent. Good. Okay. So, yeah, we were talking about your escape and resettlement, moving on. So, I mean, what was that journey like? Because physically, it must have been tough because it's not like you probably, I don't know, but it's not like you probably got in the car and just drove across the border, right? And emotionally as well. I mean, leaving family and friends and things like that in Bulgaria. And I think you went to Belgium, didn't you, from Bulgaria? Is that correct?
Yes, I escaped to Belgium directly, but I had to cross Yugoslavia. Then the critical crossing was the border with Italy
Ah,
because I managed to go to Yugoslavia with an official permission. I invented a family relationship that I knew they had not verified. And I took many other risks with the paperwork because I had to lie to them.
mm,
It was a complicated process in order to allow you to go because Yugoslavia was officially a socialist country. Uh, you could go there if you have some relatives, which is very possible because between Bulgaria and Yugoslavia, they were the common territory called Macedonia, which was changing hands during 3 or 4 Balkanic wars. And so a lot of people were born on one side or another and could, after some number of years, visit each other. So I took advantage of that. And however, I had to have other police permissions, like the director of the factory where I work need to certify that I'm politically reliable, which was absurd. It was not going to happen. I took a chance to lie to them with the forms and saying, because I quit the factory and I said, well, comrades, I'm preparing for tests, for admission test for the university in Skopje. And that's the reason I left the factory because I need to study the language. Would you certify that I worked from this date to this date and stamp and sign, hoping they'll be too lazy to read what's expected from them? That was quite a risk, but I decided to take it. There was no other way. And indeed, my guess was right. They didn't read it, and they could not even visualize that somebody is going to do something like that. They signed, and when I submitted my form to the police, specialized police who is dealing with those type of travels, uh, they did the same thing. They supposed that if it's signed and stamped, it could not be anything else. So they signed too. And that's how I managed to go to Yugoslavia. But from Yugoslavia, through private connections, I managed to obtain a Yugoslav passport. Somebody just gave me his passport. It was not falsified. Uh, it was the real thing. I just needed to cross the border, and that was another risk. Uh, I described the details in my book, but I succeeded. And once I passed to Italy, uh, the rest was much easier because I still went with Yugoslav passport with some external help also to Belgium, where I asked for political asylum. But I knew one thing, whatever happens, they're not going to extradite me.
mm,
And so that was my limit to freedom, and I succeeded. Also, uh, speaking about challenges, after I survived the Bulgarian army, everything else was piece of cake because the physical and the mental uh, pressure I had in the Bulgarian army was such that I've never had something like that a second time in my life. And that gave me the training to sustain uh, very difficult circumstances. Uh, but uh, Speaking about Belgium, I didn't waste my time in Bulgaria. I took private lessons in French. Wherever I decide to go, my plan is to know the language of that country. And I was absolutely uh, certain that only education, high education that I always dreamed for, can give me the future. And when I arrived in Belgium well prepared, I was completely fluent. I could write, speak, and uh, basically was able to deal by myself without interpreting. 8 months later, I was already in college while driving a taxi cab.
Amazing. Amazing. You're so resilient. That is incredible. Well, thinking about this, right, and you say asking for political asylum. I mean, many listeners may not understand the challenges of being a political refugee. I mean, what was it like building that new life in Brussels and studying and working as a taxi driver? I mean, luckily you had the language or one of the languages, so that's really good. I mean, learning French before you went was very smart move, wasn't it?
I studied French in school. Let me tell you, the system in Bulgaria was at the fifth grade, uh, we had to have two foreign languages. Russian was mandatory, and choose one of the three main Western languages, German, French, or English. Considering the background in my family, we had a discussion about that, and they told me uh, if you choose German, they'll link it immediately to your father's background as an officer of a country at that time allied to Nazi Germany. So basically, uh, it's not going to be seen well by the authorities. English, the same thing. You'll be labeled maybe pro-American, considering your background. Is not going to be good for you. French, it's kind of neutral. And France at that time had a very strong communist party, and they had good relationship actually with Bulgaria at that time. There were left-wing movements. At that time, there was the Alger War uh, that started in the 50s. Uh, France was still occupying earlier Vietnam, and there were anti-war movements. All the anti-war movements and the peace movement was supported heavily by the Soviet bloc. So French was considered kind of neutral language, and the French intellectuals at that time they were popular in Bulgaria. Actually, Yves Montand, the famous French actor, was also a singer. I mean, his song about Paris was all over the radios. And, so we took this decision, and my mother was almost fluent in French. She studied French. My grandfather knew French, and it was kind of a little bit in the family. So that's how I chose that language. And I had very good teachers, actually. My French was pretty good already in high school, starting in fifth grade. By the 11th grade, I could apply for French philology, and unfortunately, I was not admitted. But after that, I took private lessons, and that's how I became fully fluent. And when I escaped, uh, I was ready to go. Now, political asylum at that time was basically for people from the communist bloc. They were trying to escape, and when you escape, you have to go to refugee camps. There were three main refugee camps in Germany, in Zirndorf, in Austria, near Vienna, in Traiskirchen, and in Italy there were three camps. The largest one was Latinka, and also in Trieste. Incidentally, I crossed the border on Trieste, but I did not surrender to those camps. I considered that would be a waste of time. I had somebody from Belgium who helped me, and that's how I went directly to Belgium. And this is where the problem began, because When I arrived to Belgium, I didn't have any Bulgarian ID. I left everything in Yugoslavia. Um, and I carried only Yugoslav passport in case somebody stops me and check my luggage or pockets or whatever. They're not going to find anything related to Bulgaria. I had to pretend that I'm from Macedonia.
All right.
And that's how I arrived. So they told me, you should have gone to, this is not your first country of asylum because you crossed Italy. I told them, yes, I did, but I did not surrender. My intention was to go to Belgium, and here I am, and I'm going to stay here. And the guy who helped me, he said, I'm his sponsor. And they told him, you're breaking the law because you're smuggling foreigners in the country. He said, I escaped from communism. I still have bullets in my back for shooting me. And I'm going to help anybody who is fighting communism, who escaped from communism. And I brought this person here, and I would do it again. So they didn't bother us too much, but it was difficult to accept me. So 3 times they sent me an invitation to leave the country. They said, we'll facilitate you, go anywhere you want, like Canada, the United States, France, will facilitate you, you go. I said, no, I'm going to Belgium. I would like to stay in Belgium. And later on, my documentation came, and after a while, I received political asylum. It was not easy, but fortunately, I knew the language. I was kind of independent. I could defend myself, and I can use another argument that I could not prove, but it's a kind of historical. Bulgaria and Belgium have the same royal dynasty, the Saxe-Coburg-Gotha.
All right. Yes.
And the Bulgarian king was the young Bulgarian king that was sent to exile was the son of the uh, his father was from Saxe-Coburg, and the previous king of Bulgaria, and his mother was the queen of Italy, and he was living in exile in Spain. And I wrote to him. I managed to find his address, and I said, my father was officer of your father's army, and could you help me just to stay in Belgium? I don't know if he did or not. Later years, when I knew him personally, I interviewed him in the Voice of America several times, and I've been invited actually in Coburg also with a reunion of his family. And I asked him, I asked you for help at that time. Do you remember writing to the Belgian king or authorities to help me? He said, oh, I don't remember. Probably he was too modest to say. But suddenly I received the permission. I received political asylum, then work permits, and then everything became easy. My mother also escaped after me. She was through the same path with Yugoslav passport. And when she came, it was much easier for her. I already had political asylum, and that's how we started our life in Belgium.
Fantastic. Your story is amazing. So, okay, in the 1980s, and you mentioned this already, you became an international broadcaster with the Voice of America. So what drew you to that role, and how did it connect to your personal mission? Was it because you used to listen to it as a child and you
It's more than that. You're familiar with the case of Georgi Markov on the Bulgarian umbrella. Actually,
yes.
it's well known.
Yes.
Georgi Markov was one of the best journalists. Actually, I write about him a lot in my book and about his books and about later development. I interviewed his wife, Annabelle, and but I'm not going into those details. He was extremely capable writer, which is unusual for a socialist country. And he became the favorite of Todor Zhivkov, the party secretary. However, he was also son of a royal officer, just like me. And after a while, he could not stand anymore the corruption, the regime, and he escaped. He went to UK. He started working for BBC and writing also his memoir uh, for Radio Free Europe that started broadcasting. And he had a warning, stop doing this. He did not stop, so they killed him with the so-called umbrella, Bulgarian umbrella. And that happened in 1978. And I followed his case. And when he died, I decided that would be my natural duty and inclination to apply for his job and to continue his mission. So I applied for BBC. And at that time, I applied also for Radio Voice of America. And actually, I succeeded the test in both places. I was at that time also accepted in the Council of Europe as an intern in Strasbourg, France, and everything developed at the same time. Voice of America decided to take me as a stranger, but they closed the office for lack of funds. So I did a couple of reports, but that was it. However, BBC invited me for an interview. They paid me the trip to London. Everything was great. It was an enigma why I didn't get the job, although they told me that, yeah, I'm the best. Years later, when I was service chief of the Voice of America, the former service chief of BBC came and I told him, well, come now and tell me what happened in 1978. He said, another immigrant from Italy was candidate and he was propelled by a politician. He's the one who got the job because his diploma was higher than yours. He had a doctorate or something like that. However, it happened this diploma was fake, delivered by an old university from fascist time when Mussolini was promoting his fascist butchers or vegetable men, promoted like the communists were doing promotions of their illiterate gangs and give them fake diplomas. So this university was still existing and the guy bought his diploma. Of course, he was fired. But that's the reason I didn't work for BBC. And I made a career in Voice of America. And actually, I've been still working full-time until last month when President Trump decided to close those radios, Voice of America, Radio Free Europe, Free Asia, etc., etc. I'm not going to discuss those decisions, but that's the end of my career. I'm going to retire in a few months.
So let's move on then to, I mean, fascinating story we've got here. Honestly, it's like you should sell the rights to your life story to somebody, I think, even if you haven't done already. Okay, so then moving on, you joined the US Navy Reserve at, 43 years old, which is quite remarkable, really. I mean, what motivated you to do that? And what were some of the reasons for doing this? I mean, that is quite an amazing thing anyway, but so tell me about the reasons and tell me about your most memorable experiences during your service.
The reasons began already at the Bulgarian army. The kind of mistreatment was exposed. Also, jointly with the understanding that this army had nothing Bulgarian, but it was an appendix to the Soviet army and protector of communism, expanding world communism and protecting the regime that killed my grandfather. and reduced me to misery. And basically, this is the place where try to break your character and to create a slave of the state, the party state. So I hated it so much that I was ready to do anything to destroy this. And of course, in order to do that, I need to have some kind of freedom. And I will always try for personal freedom. So my next objective was to escape. And I did successfully. When I became Belgian citizen, naturalized, I was 28. And immediately I was called in the Belgian army as a conscript. I enjoyed that. That was my dream to wear NATO uniform and to be able to oppose communism with the Western uniform, which is the uniform of freedom. But that came in a very bad moment because I just graduated and I had to do my dissertation. I mean, dissertation for a regular university degree or BA. We have 1 year to defend the dissertation. Usually people do that for master's degree, but no, we had to do that. And I started working on the project. And I told them to the authorities, can you postpone for me? I don't want to interrupt that. I spent years to graduate, and I just need 2 more months. They said, no, it's take it or leave it. But you have the possibility to uh, uh, to ask to be free from military service for two moral reasons. The first reason, you served in the military army. Yes, you did, the Bulgarian army. The second reason, you're older than 28. Reluctantly, I took that option. I was very sad, but I always gave priority to education, and I had to take care of my mother and my sister, who was 10 years old at that time. So that's why I didn't serve in the Belgian army. But when I went to the United States, the first thing I wanted to do is to join the US military. Uh, but I had problems with age limits. And ultimately, the only possibility was still with the Navy. I was close to the age limit too. However, at that time, there were spy scandals. John Walker was spent 20 years. He was Navy warrant officer for the Soviet Union. And he was caught at that time when I applied. So then the whole Navy was vibrating in panic mood. And I thought, okay, here we are not by Bulgarian. So they rejected me immediately. My fault was, but I was naive to apply for Navy intelligence, where I thought my strong point, and it is. I speak several languages. I have intimate knowledge of the Soviet military system because I was in. You're not going to learn the details in manuals. And I wanted to fight communism. I wanted to wear this uniform. And also I want that was gratitude for the opportunities that the United States gave me. So I fought for a couple of years, ultimately complained to my congressman, and I've been authorized to join, and that's how it happened. The ultimate age limit was not to have my 43rd birthday. I was sworn in 43rd birthday minus 1 week. But I
Just in time. Just in time. Exactly. Oh, wow. Well done. So, okay, let's talk about your book then for a moment. I mean, it speaks of self-accomplishment and the American dream, right? I mean, what does that dream mean to you today? And, has your definition of it, sort of changed over time? You've served obviously in the reserves and everything else, and you've lived in the States. So what do you think about this? Because everyone wants to know about the American dream, right?
This is an extremely good question. because a lot of people are talking about the American dream. The American dream is a proverbial thing in the United States. And the United States, indeed, is still uh, the only country in the world where you can realize what you really want. Nobody is going to stop you, but you have to work hard. You have to take the decision. You have to work hard, but you can achieve what you want. So it depends what you want. It depends who you ask. For some, and because I listen to conversation, people's comments. For some people, the American dream is to get your house, to get your dog, your wife, your car, be able to go on vacation. Yeah, you achieve the American dream.
Hmm.
Somebody else, it may be, yeah, maybe to get a country house too. But for me, it was kind of different. I was working on ideas that were larger than myself. The idea of defending freedom. Uh, Incidentally, I did get a good job and I had a good education that I wanted to apply. Ultimately, I by the end of my European period, I've been invited to do a PhD in France. That was not in my plan, but I cannot say no. So I accepted that. It took me 2 more years, actually, more than that, because I founded the subject in the world communist system and its role in international terrorism for 2000 pages in France.
Right.
And I thought that my service to the freedom and to the United States, both to the military institutions, to the work I do, on the material side, yes, I have, but ordinary people myself, yeah, that's my dream. It's not a question of how it's easy. If you work hard, you're in the West, you can have those things, and I do. But that was not my supreme desire. My supreme desire is to do what I managed to do. I spent 20 years in the US Navy, and those 20 years were part Cold War, which was fun. But then after the end of the Cold War, I knew that the United States and NATO need to kill the former communist countries. And who is in the best position on the Bulgarian side? Me. I'm already in the Navy. And actually, I've been sent to Bulgaria 3 times on active duty to help them. I even proposed to the Bulgarian Academy, Officers Academy, to develop for them a course on top secret clearances, maintenance, and etc. But the subject was a little bit too big for my pay grade. Needed much more to realize that I reached those levels, high levels with government through the main Reservist and through the members of parliament. And then one of those members was the Bulgarian ambassador, Galina Poptodorova, who was twice an ambassador. She is one of the most prominent politicians in Bulgaria. And she was even speaker for my retirement ceremony. So I reached the best levels I could to help that country and to help the U.S. Navy with my knowledge. Initially, I became a journalist with the anti-submarine patrol squadron with special program. But I did cross ultimately to intelligence specialist and intelligence analyst. It took me 12 years until I had the full security clearance, but I did. So basically, I achieved everything I wanted, and I'm very satisfied. Close to the end of my life, maybe. That's the end of my professional life. And here comes my memoir, which is my legacy. And I believe that whoever reads it puts himself or herself in my place and see what I saw through my eyes and get their own or their own proper conclusions and make this kind of comparison, see what communism is, see what European socialism is, because in Europe there is a type of socialism in
Sure.
Europe,
Mhm.
which is not, I had a good life, but I could see the high taxes, uh, the healthcare system, which is cannot measure to the American one. And ultimately, that would provide kind of tool to the young Americans when they make those comparisons and live kind of through my eyes, those systems and worlds and the different systems and two continents. Ultimately, they'll figure out that there is no best place than America. And the American dream exists. This is still the country of unlimited possibilities. And no wonder that uh, and my native from Belgium, he became a doctor in molecular immunotherapy. A few weeks later, he got a work visa and moved to the United States, and he's now assistant professor
Well,
at the University of Indianapolis. And yes, this is the greatest country, and people can have this comparison and reach by themselves this conclusion and have uh, an understanding of the price of freedom, because freedom is not cheap, and if it's not defended, as President Reagan said, we may be one generation away of losing it. So history repeats itself, and the previous example of history shows how fragile democracy is,
Mm.
and people should remember how the first and second World War started, and according to some, the third one already started low intensity level, and people should be aware of the security of their country and their own perspective that are still the best that needs to be protected. And I hope and I believe that my modest work would provide help at that direction.
Mm. And you mentioned your family, and you've mentioned your mother. You've mentioned helping family members to get over to Belgium, and basically your family's been very important, and to you, or well, to your I guess upbringing, and obviously your personal growth as well as your academic growth, because they helped you to focus on what you were doing and helped you to make the correct choices in terms of your language choice and whatever else. Also, a little bit of hindrance, I guess, because with your father's background as well, as you say, that caused you some problems when you were in Bulgaria. And you mentioned your wife, including your, Dobrinka, which is nice, and Ryan as well, your son. I mean, how important has your immediate family been in grounding you and guiding you through such a dynamic life that's gone from one country to another under such stress, and you fought your way to get to where you are now? Family's really supported you, I imagine.
Yes, actually, we've been planning the escape together with my mother. However, when that really happened, and we found ourselves in Belgium, it was not easy. And suddenly, my responsibilities multiplied by several stages because it's not just the education. We started, I mean, from scratch. We didn't get any money, uh, and my mother, I didn't want to enter in those details, but at the age of 50, she had cancer
Oh, dear.
and she had a surgery. And I described that in the book. Uh, we, we contact when she understood that she became very pale when she thought, okay, I'm going to probably die. And we get, and within less than 2 years, refugees in Belgium. And we asked an old established Bulgarian family what to do. They said, you have two choices. You go for a surgery in the state hospital, after which you're going to die. That was shocking to hear. The second option is go to a private clinic, you pay everything from your pocket, and you're going to live. I took this option with wine. I made a deal with the doctor. I said, go ahead, take my mother, do it, do your best to save her. I'm going to pay the whole thing, whatever it is. So I had, the doctor said, try to open a loan for you that I paid for 10 years. But my mother lived for 15 years. And, I had to do that.
Yeah. That paid off then. Yeah.
There's no second thought. You just jump on, go on, and remember the old difficult time you had in your life, and think that in the West it's not the same thing. It doesn't matter how difficult it is. It's always better when you have the tools to success. I use those tools and I did success.
Absolutely. And there you are. I mean, that really sums up everything, doesn't it? People think that they've got a hard time where they are now in the West, but they don't know anything about what people have to put up with or had to put up with under these regimes. Okay, so let's try and wrap things up now, Michael, because everyone's going to be very tired after listening to this because it's so fascinating. Oh, sorry. So are there any upcoming projects or appearances or messages that you'd like to share with our listeners?
It's an interesting question. As I said, I had my perspective in my book. But right now we live in a difficult time, economically, politically. It's not easy what we're facing. We have international situations that remind us, like what's going on in Ukraine, what may happen in Taiwan. Those are growing challenges which require attention and good understanding of the European and American populations, what's ahead, what the challenge is, what's going to happen if you take the challenge or if you don't take it. And ultimately, everybody should judge or his personal input for the success of our democratic system. Sacrifices will be needed, and people should have various conclusions from their past, knowledge of history, and analyzing the present situation in order to see, as I put at the end, the last line of my book, what President Kennedy said, don't ask for your country to do what your country can do for you. But I add to that, see by yourself what you can do for your country and ultimately for yourself. First to save the freedoms and then to protect this great economic system that we have and that we join in the Western community of NATO.
Absolutely. Well, Michael, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us today about your book. And, your story reminds us that freedom isn't just an idea, really. Especially for you, it's a journey, freedom. It's not something that you can just take for granted. It's often hard won, as yours was. Look at what you had to do to get that freedom, and also deeply personal as well. What with your family history and all of those things that you had to go through before you left Sofia. So Sofia-Brussels-Washington is more than a memoir, really. I think it's a testament to your perseverance, your courage, and basically human spirit. So well done on that. Guys, listeners, you can find Michael's books wherever fine books are sold. And be sure to follow us for more inspiring stories from authors like Michael who've lived through them. So thanks for joining us today on the BrightWord Books podcast. And until next time, keep reading, keep dreaming, of course, and keep turning the page as well. So, Michael, thank you very, very much. And I hope you have a great rest of the day. Thanks for joining us.
So much. It was an honor speaking to you.
Thank you. Take care. Thanks. Bye-bye.
You too.